All right, greetings. So turn up the video speed. There's a kind of a double irony in the fact that the same threat they used to tell against women, they still tell the guys. And imagine, ladies, you might have heard it as well. And the second part of the irony is that these are the same guys that society's generally telling, ew, men, we don't need men. Men and boys bad. Like go to the land of the untouchables unless you're like, the upper 5%. And so you tell these guys the same line you've told women. And what is that line? Well, you better have a wife and kids. You better settle down. You better lower your standards, settle down, have some kids, or when you get old, you'll die alone. Well, I'm here to tell you there's lots of good parents out there that still die alone. So, not much of a threat. But why do we do this? Why do we think this way? What's the background behind it? I'm going to answer all this. And then what's the superior plan to where retirement by 30 if you choose to? Maybe 7 to 10 years if you get into the game later. Yeah, Freedom Phil, like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So, yeah, I've heard this over the years in my life where they're like, they're telling you better have kids because of this. And usually it's women saying that. And it's like, well, okay, yeah, but these are the same women that regularly divorce a bunch of guys and kind of kick them out on the streets. And, every problem ever in the world apparently is some man's fault. And so some of the guys are like walking away. And obviously women are doing this too. Women have been doing this for years because when it turned out when we didn't have to have tons of kids just to think about retirement, we stopped doing it. So let's get into the classical reason why people had huge families. Well, way back in the day, that was your Social Security or pension plan. There was no pensions or Social Security. So you had a bunch of kids. So let's say you had 6 kids. 2 of them were complete screw-ups. Maybe you had 8 kids and 2 of them died, when they're children or at work or something. So you got effectively 4 left. Well, 2 of them have normal problems and they're struggling. You don't want to burden them. Hopefully 2 of them at least have their act together enough where they can help take care of dear old mom and pa. And maybe sometimes that would be, mom and pa moving in with the family. And that's why we had big houses back in the day, or we all kind of lived in the same greater area. And there is a beauty to that unity, because instead of having, like, let's say, and by the way, it's another video I need to do in the future. It's called the Mexican Voltron, where it's like all the lions come together. So one guy's a plumber, one guy's an electrician, one guy's an HVAC guy, and they all come together and they can rebuild houses or build houses brand new for practically nothing. That's what we used to have as a culture. What we saw over the course of time was kind of a self-interest divide and conquer. And they're like, well, what do you mean? Let me explain. As we got through, some world wars, and let me give you the reason that some of these programs happened. Like, we had a world war, and then a poor mother, the husband died, and then the poor mother lost all her sons. And there's nobody to come back and take care of this mother. And the argument was, you got these old women, old people, because old men are already dead. Kind of the joke of A Place for Mom, that advertisement, because dad's already dead. They're out eating dog food. That would be the sign. She's eating canned dog food. And I'm looking at it like, man, you can afford canned dog food, because let's be honest, canned dog food is just low-grade spam, if we're being honest with it. Like, sometimes when I eat spam, I'm like, human-compatible dog food. Yeah, that's the situation. These days, it'd be like, she's eating beans and rice for every meal. And then somewhere in some third world country, they're like, you have beans and rice? We're eating mud cakes. Talk about privilege, but that's the thing, you have these old people that were left over because their kids died in world wars. So this is also why they made that one particular law where I think it's either the oldest or the youngest child. I believe it's the youngest child can't be drafted. Something like that. So they're guaranteed to be someone to help take care of the elderly parents. But then along comes Social Security. And with Social Security, then surprisingly, women started rethinking this whole big family thing. Because for a long time, it kind of continued on because, well, sex is fun and birth control wasn't really around that much. So there was one more reason that people had tons of kids because, yeah, it's fun until you have to have them. And then also, let's look at the technological advantages we have these days, especially for the ladies. Women used to die in childbirth. It's kind of a somewhat normal thing. Not all the time, but it happened. Thus the term childbearing hips, But, yeah, as women realized, wait a minute, I don't have to have, 6 kids to guarantee that I'm not, like, living on the streets as an old woman. So they have 1, maybe 2 children. And then as the cost of living's gone up because, well, nobody really wants to pay their bills. And I think I've already done a dozen and a half times that the Nobody really pays taxes short or video. And hell, I could do it again at some point if anybody wants it. But for now, we'll skip that. Basically, like, yeah, because everything's done on, what do you call it? Debt. We just basically print more money to do things. And everybody's, thinks it's a free ride. No, no, we're basically, your value of your dollar's gone down. The cost of your housing goes up because inflation's gone up. The cost of goods goes up because inflation goes up. The cost of labor goes up. So, it's an honest argument when some parents say, we can't afford to have more than one or two kids. It's kind of true, kind of not. But then we got to get into the lifestyle that's come along with the whole Social Security pension system as well. Because you're only having one or two kids, there's other things you're prioritizing your money around. And that might happen to be, we want a nicer car than our neighbors have, nicer car than that bitch at work. Oh, we're friends. We're best friends. Fucking bitch. Let's just be real. Sometimes when you look at women's friendships, it's like looking at cat friendships. You're like, okay, you guys are friends for like this few minutes, but you're going to be at each other's throats by the end of the day. She's got a better purse than I do. She's got a bigger house than I do. And how much of these choices, like where guys go, yes, dear, and then throughout the course of the yes, dear lifestyle, marriage and whatnot, you guys pissed away 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, let's think about this. 7 to 10 years is all it really takes for someone to have a fully funded retirement and a paid off house in America and a brand new car. I mean, quick numbers on that. Like, you're driving truck, living super cheap, or you're working a trade, living super cheap. And effectively, you take the excess money you're making when you're young and you invest it. This is part of the reason I have such a problem with that whole, you got to be 21 years old to drive over state lines in a big rig, or any sort of thing where they're holding people back. College, where why don't we just teach this at home? Why don't we make it as cheap as possible to get the skills? And then you prove you have the skills. That way you can get into the working market as young as possible. Like, if you were 14 years old and you could do taxes, why can't you? If you've already proven you can do it. Like, this is the thing, as young as possible, so you can start letting compound interest work for you as cheap as possible. Like 7 to 10 years, you're ready to go. So you think the average person working at least 40, 50 years, we're talking 5 times the effort to maybe have a retirement, maybe have something. And how many of these people you see out there are still just living off Social Security? All because they waste the money throughout the course of their lives. And for women, it's just a lot of times, and by the way, not all women. I'm saying this because I have met some highly efficient, ridiculously well-organized women out there. But for the most part, I see a lot of you just take the money and you just piss it away to be better than your friends. And guys, why we piss it away? We buy it to impress women. I got my car. You guys, great classic song. Was it the Fabulous Thunderbirds? The song "Wrap It Up." That is a guy's mentality. Baby, what you want? Wrap it up. Boom, boom, boom. I'll take it. Do, 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 do. It encapsulates the 1980s mentality. But honestly, excess money, excess wealth pissed away just to impress people who don't really care. And then at the end of it all, you get to old age. And because you've pissed away the majority of your money throughout the course of your life, that comes back. If you don't have kids, you'll die alone and old, and nobody will care. Yeah, because you got nothing going on. And why are we this way? Because we're trained to be this way from a very young age. And I'm not the first to point this out. Guys like Clary have pointed out. A lot of other people, and Dave Ramsey pointed out. You go to school being cooler than the other people at school, the clothes, the cars. Remember when high tops were things, or remember pumps, Air Jordans? Just kind of that's a moment in time. But you got all these different fashion trends and things that starts in, like, I'd say elementary, but really middle school is when you really start noticing it. And then high school, you ride the bus? I have a car. And then it goes into luxury educations, like, where people going to college. And it just keeps on going on. And the childish mentality, you never evolve out of it. And some people, I don't know, maybe after 1 or 2 divorces, they evolve a little. But by that time, you've wasted the prime years of your life. And what is really the prime years of your life? When you can work and make real money and you're healthy. You're not really afraid of health issues. And sometimes, I've heard other luminaries say this, where they're like, you get these people and they're like 60 years old. So I'm ready to start saving for retirement. I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. You could save right now and do minimalism. And by the way, actually, that's kind of only sort of true. I've actually met people where you have like an old lady or an old man, and they're only getting like $800 a month from Social Security. Maybe they get food stamps and a free cell phone from the government. So we're talking they're living under, right around $1,000 per month. But they're doing van life and they're traveling. And they're like, my quality of life has drastically gone up doing the van thing. I'm seeing more of the country. I have more excess money, and I've actually improved my life than when they were just working and paying rent. So we really got to go back and look at it from the standpoint of paying rent. And I don't know how many times I got to reiterate this: paying rent and a mortgage. If you can't pay cash for something, do not buy it. It's better to buy a cheap house than buy an expensive house that you're going to give away most of your life to pay for. It's better to have an old car that you can take care of, or a second car as a backup plan, than it is to have a brand new vehicle that you're paying payments on. And the reason most of you never can retire, and that you need that Social Security plan, and you need your kids to come back, because it's one thing when your kids come back to visit. But let's be honest, most people's kids, they've got the same problems that you had because you didn't train them right, because you weren't trained right. But like this thing where you see where people are pissing away, honestly, five times the money they need to get to a lesser point, to a way lesser point. It's ridiculous. And I don't know. For those of us that have the superior mentalities, superior strategy and mentalities, we can try to put the information out there, but most of you ain't going to listen. That's just the sad truth. And all the programming, I'm not the first to point this out. Many of others pointed it out. Clary pointed it out. Between the TV, the public schools, just general society, we can't get that the fuck out of you. But for you young people out there, yeah, there's way better ways. And people say, well, what if I want to have kids? Well, imagine this for a second as a closing thought. If you had your, retirement, or if you were 30 years old and then decided to have kids and you already had your retirement fully funded and a house that's completely paid off, wouldn't that be a better place to be to raise kids? A fully paid off house and you're not worried about the money. Just saying. And a good example of why this is a way better way. Go watch that documentary about Lordstown, whatever state it was in, where they made the Chevy Cruze. And when that place shut down, it was the exact same thing I heard all across America. And it's part of the reason I'm a minimalist. I grew up in a mill town on the West Coast in the Northwest, North Olympic Peninsula. And those paper mills shut down on a semi-regular basis, whether they were shutting down temporarily or shutting down permanently one day. And I saw a lot of people that lost their houses. They lost everything they put years into. And you know why? Because they were all living in credit debt throughout the course of their life. Some of them even got screwed out of their pensions. They were just how many years away from having their pension? They got completely screwed. And you know why? They put all their eggs in one basket. They didn't think for the future, and they all wanted to be better than their neighbors. So when I've said these comments online, no, it's the people's fault for not saving. Like if they'd done minimalism when they were younger, they would have been perfectly well set up. They wouldn't have to move out of their town. Well, I gotta go work in this factory where the company's saving this much by, like, the union costs this much in this state and it costs this much less in the other state. I gotta move to this other state because I don't want my family to lose its house. You wouldn't have to do all that crap if you just had your game together to begin with. So, yeah, you don't need to have kids as a backup plan. You need to have your plan together when you're young. Just saying. Anyways, this is Freedom Phil. Remember, turn up the video speed, like, subscribe. And part of the reason I say that, by the way, just so people know, part of the reason I say turn up the video speed is, one, I'm capable of listening to things at high speeds. And two, well, this is a 13, almost 14-minute video. What if you could do it in 7 minutes instead? Just saying. Y'all have a good day.